Welcome to Whistleblowers in partnership with Wix Trade Pro. So here we go, the first bonus ball of 2026 featuring Mark Clattenburg, Ian Ladyman and Gordon Smart. Smart, Clattenburg and Ladyman sounds like a really dodgy legal firm. And that's how we intend to proceed for the rest of this year. This is the bonus ball, and we're going to start with a question as we always do. And it's from Andy. Andy says, "Hello guys, really enjoying the pod so far. We'll be keeping you to those New Year's resolutions." What were our New Year's resolutions? I've forgotten mine already. Anyway, let's move on.
I said I wasn't going to slag managers off.
That's enough for now. So Andy goes on, he says, I wanted to ask about something that I think is being ignored with all these manager sackings. Amarim went off on one about being a head coach and a manager and all that, but what's the actual difference? Does it matter? Are the expectations different? It seems to me that if you lose enough matches, you get sacked just the same, but managers are so keen to tell us which one they are. All the best for 2026, Andy. Now, we've kind of touched on this recently, but you know the fact of the matter is, Mark, if you don't win games, you get the bin. It doesn't matter what the name above the door says.
The salary is the same.
Is it the same?
Right, it's got to be the same. It's just a title, isn't it?
Right.
You come in, and now it's fashionable to be a head coach.
Yeah.
And I think we've touched on it before, and we'll touch on it again quickly. A head coach is a person who will work within a structure, who's given players to coach and to make better and to win football matches.
Yeah.
A manager used to be involved in the transfers. He used to get the players he wanted in. He would even probably ring the agents.
Yeah.
Now, that isn't the way football is going now. I think head coaches is what it is, a young man's title to a older man's manager. And I think they're on the training ground where experienced managers in the past wouldn't be on the training ground.
Yeah.
Like Fergie would leave it to Mike Phelan. You had other, was it who was the coach at Everton? Who was the Everton coach? He's still there now at under Moisey. Doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is, these people would be the ones that won. Alan Irvine.
Alan Irvine.
Yeah. So all these people would be with the boots on, the tracksuit on. You've got your Warney. You've got Stevie Stone at Forest now.
Eric Black
all of them.
didn't he?
Eric Black. They're all on the training ground. But now the coaches are running the shows. They're running the operations on the training ground, and they're made to play within the structure.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? And this apologies if this is teaching anybody to suck eggs, but I remember getting a job in newspapers, and I was presented by HR with the org chart, the organisational chart of where everybody stood and who answered to who, just to be absolutely clear about who you answer to, and who responds to you and who you're going to deal with. And that's kind of what it's about, isn't it, Ian? It's like, if you're the manager, that's very different from the head coach. If you're operating in an org chart that has a sporting director, a medical director, a head of transfers, like in the ADO role, that's the difference here, isn't it? I think that's what we're trying to clear up.
Yeah, I think football clubs, especially at the top level, are enormous organisations these days. Yeah. They were always big. But let's not fool ourselves. They're miles bigger now in terms of globally, in terms of staffing levels, in terms of number of players, if you go all the way down from first team through under 23s and down to the academy. So asking one individual to sit across all of that and get results out of the first team on a Saturday is probably rather ridiculous. The way that Alex Ferguson used to do it, Alex Ferguson used to say famously that he knew the name of every single person at Manchester United, whether it was his captain or his reserve team captain or the chap who put the bins out. Okay? So, and that the world has changed. So these days, football clubs think, well, what we need to specialise. So we specialise positions, specialise recruitment, specialise analysis, specialised data, and then you get the guy whose job it is to coach the team and pick the team and motivate the team and make in-game decisions, okay? And so it's become a little bit more boxed off, and that's the way that big clubs like to do it. I think it's probably the way to do it. When problems arise is when a manager becomes frustrated, or a head coach becomes frustrated in that box. If he thinks he's been given, a manager a head coach should never be given a player that he hasn't had some kind of sign off on. He's got to be involved in the recruitment process to a degree, okay? United stumbled by giving Erik ten Hag too much power in recruitment, went back to the old school, didn't work. Okay, so that's the way it is. So it's nuanced, it's fluid. The lines are blurred. At the good clubs, the lines are blurred in that you can You can be a head coach who still has influence on recruitment, still has influence in other things that happen at the football club, but whilst understanding that your prime responsibility is to coach and pick the team. The great example is Manchester City. Manchester City won the league under Roberto Mancini, but he was fighting with everybody while he did it because he wanted control of the whole football club. He was fighting with the medical department. He was fighting with the recruitment department, and he got away with it because he won the league. But the City were burned by that experience and thought, that's not what we want. We want a structure that is so slick and works so well that if a head coach fails, it doesn't matter because we slide him out and we slide the next one into the system. So we slide Pellegrini in and then we slide him out. And then he got the chance, and it was working very well until he got the chance to take Pep Guardiola, and they totally ripped it up for Pep because Pep's Pep, and Pep's been allowed to have incredible influence on their football club. I tell you what, when he goes, they'll go back to the other one. It's different at Villa, there's a load of influence that other managers, coaches don't have. But broadly in the Premier League, that is the way that it's gone now, and that is why.
It must be difficult, Ian, because everything has to align, doesn't it? As a manager, we're all head coach, we'll all accept that it's a result-driven sport, isn't it? It's about winning. Mm-hmm. And if you've got a player that's on the verge of being fit or not, he's on the training ground, he's integrated back within the squad, but the medical staff are saying, well, nah, he's not 100% ready. And you're the head coach, you're the one that's going to be in the firing line if the result isn't right. And I remember years ago, and it was Rafa Benitez with Steve Highwoman. He was the youth team coach, and it was over a guy called Jay Spearing. Jay Spearing was centre-half, youth team captain, very, very good, talented player, but he was really small player. Yeah. And what I remember Rafa Benitez saying, how could I put him up against Didier Drogba? And there was a big fallout within that small structure that they had. Not the big structure now, but that small structure to say, I cannot put Jay Spearing, even though he's a very good footballer, he's not ready physically to match Didier Drogba. Therefore, I've only got a short period of my management career at Liverpool. I've got to get results. Therefore, I'm going to have to ignore the youth team coach who's trying to develop these players. And if you're not going to, how are you going to work within that structure when you have now got how many departments? Yeah. Cam said, Man United have got this director of football, you've got the transfer policy director, you've got this director, you've got head of communicate. All of these people, if one of them doesn't play to the structure, it's the head coach that seems to get the bullet.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I think it's a fair point, and we have seen issues this season where it's not worked. Reading between the lines, and you might have input on this, Mark. If you look at Nottingham Forest at the start of the season, came off a great progressive season under Nuno last year. Edu was brought in from Arsenal, obviously a friend of the owner, and all of a sudden, Nottingham Forest signed a group of players in the summer who, reading between the lines, Nuno clearly didn't want, and such as Amari Hutchinson, for example, and it was clear that he didn't want them because when he came to name his squad for Europe, they weren't in it. Okay, so now that's the example of where it doesn't work. You can't have players foisted on a head coach who he just doesn't want. You can't do it that way.
You can do it to a point. You can do it to a point, Ian, because I want to give a little bit of thought to that, because when Nottingham Forest got promoted into the Premier League, he had to do it. Sunderland have had to do it to try and survive. You have to have a big recruitment because you come out of the Championship, you've got Championship players. So some teams, they invest. I think Nottingham Forest was it 26 players? Sunderland have invested in 50.
Let me tell you this, Mark. Reggie the Bree at Sunderland had input in every one of those.
No, 100%. And I like that structure at Sunderland. I really, really do. Nottingham Forest had that structure when Ross Wilson was in and Nuno was allowed to build. I think when a manager or a head coach, whatever you want to call them, decides, you know what, we've got a good squad here. Yeah. We need maybe 2 more players, 3 more players. The problem you've then got, these owners now, or the sporting directors think, you know what, we want to be now playing Champions League football next year. Let's go and sign that £30 million player. Let's go and sign that £25 million player. Amari Hutchinson from Ipswich was what? Close to 40 million, if I'm right? These are big, big money not to work within Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
Big clubs can get away with it, but Nottingham Forest cannot. And Edu's an example. He's brought all these players in.
You can't
But
buy players that Elijah didn't want.
Yeah, but if Edu would come in and Edu would sign, say, 2 or 3 players that Nuno wanted, and you give Nuno the tools, I think Nottingham Forest would be more successful in this season.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is what I mean when I'm talking about nuance. It's very finely balanced, and it's about relationships, isn't it? It's about relationships.
It's in those grey areas where the arguments happen.
One of Brendan Rodgers' big complaints when he left Liverpool back in the day was that they'd introduced this policy where they didn't want to sign players over the age of 26, and he didn't, and he wasn't. They had a transfer committee, and Brendan was a little bit more old school in terms of the way he wanted to run a football club, and then he did get his way on a player like Christian Benteke, and look how badly that turned out.
Didn't work out, did it?
You know, sometimes like you say, Gordon, shades of grey, and it's about relationships.
It is indeed.
Right, before we get back into football chat, we're in partnership with Wix Trade Pro, and honestly, if you're a tradesperson listening, this is one you want to hear.
Aye, because Wix Trade Pro is here to save you time and money. Save 10% every time you shop in-store or online. No minimum spend, no faff, just proper savings.
Wix know that tool theft can have a devastating impact on you, your life and your livelihood. And since prevention is always better than a cure, let's start there. They've just launched something genuinely smart with Deter Tech. It's called Smart Water, award-winning forensic marking technology that helps combat tool theft. Basically, mark your gear and it becomes traceable and recoverable if it's ever nicked.
Amazing. Anyway, 3 steps. 1, mark your tools with the applicator and solution. 2, stick the deterrent signage up. And 3, register it so anything nicked can be identified.
Simple, effective, and gives you peace of mind, which is more than Mark ever gave Premier League managers.
Unbelievable. Download the Wix Trade Pro app to sign up today.
Right, to kick us back into the swing of things, Ian, it's your turn to put that press conference question to Mark Clattenburg if you've got one up your sleeve. So get us going then. What have you got for Clattenburg this week?
Very simple, Mark. What was the worst type of player for you to referee, and indeed the worst type? I'm not asking you to name names, but the worst type of player and the worst type of manager for you to referee.
I'm going to shape my answer on certain individuals without naming the individuals. So see if you can guess the individuals. That would be like a game. That would be a game. A player that wouldn't not necessarily communicate, because you had to judge as a referee which players wanted to communicate and which didn't, and communicate at the right time when players were having a bad time, not to communicate. There was an art to that, but it's a one that just disrespected everything that you tried to achieve on the football field, because refereeing was an art that referees had an ability to try and manage the football matches, especially in the Premier League, where we had the game itself, making it as exciting as possible to let the games flow. But there was certain individuals on the football field that just disregarded everything. And even when you tried to manage them and not give them a yellow card for dissent, they would push it more and push it more to a point where other players are looking, going, are you going to let him away with that? And then it started to question your judgment and question your integrity, to then say at a point, I'm stamping down on that. I'm going to choose to give you that yellow card. And there's that. There wasn't many players in the Premier League like that, but there was 1 or 2 individuals. And there was 1 or 2 individuals where you could communicate with, but you would never get the last answer.
Would you ever say that to a manager? Would you ever say that to a manager? Say, look, he's on a yellow card. If you don't take him off, he's getting a red.
I did.
Yeah,
I did it. Bolton, Manchester City. I cautioned Craig Bellamy for a yellow card. You know it was coming. And I cautioned him for dissent. And at half time, I said to one of the coaching staff, how would you put up with him on a training ground week to week when he's abusing me like that?
Yeah.
and it ended up in the newspaper the next day.
Did it?
So I chose then to choose your words wisely when you speak. But you realise football changed that much when you couldn't have that conversation saying, you know what, I've had a problem with him.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it? And they put it out there. So I thought, wait, should I manage that player differently next time? Should I just give him the red card?
Trust is managed.
Because there's a fine art and a fine balance between a player. And can remember Adam Lallana?
Yep.
Quickly. I remember saying to Adam Lallana, I should have sent him off for foul and abusive language after the full-time whistle. And I decided to manage him by saying, you've changed since you played for England, to diffuse a situation, and it was in the newspaper the next day. And I'm thinking...
And what about managers, Mark? What was the worst type of manager to try and
the ones that were nice to you, knowing that they're playing mind games. I've had managers or coaches or whatever they're called now putting letters into your dressing room before the games, wishing you all the best. Mind games of saying that in the media after the game that you're the best referee in the Premier League. So you listen to it. So the next week's it's about winning the football matches. Of course it is. And I remember a certain individual coming into my dressing room and saying to the fourth official, and he was like buttering up the fourth official, and he just blanked me, which was fine. I haven't got a problem with that because I was having run-ins with him at the time. So our relationship had probably spilled over a little bit. And he was like being really nice to the fourth official. I'm thinking, are you stupid, to the head coach in my head, thinking this fourth official isn't going to referee many big matches.
Yeah.
And B, he's only the fourth official of the day. What's he going to do? Yeah. And I just laughed to myself thinking, this is the level you went to. A, probably to piss us off, but B, to try and befriend the fourth official thinking he's going to get something the following week.
Was he a Portuguese manager?
I can't comment.
Marco Silva would never do that.
I always think the fourth official is the worst job in football. Just spend 90 minutes or 100 minutes as it is these days, standing between the two dugouts, just getting all that grief. And you can't do anything about it. You're not even refereeing the game.
You can't.
What are you supposed to do?
You can, because what you do is you just say to them, when they really get uptight, you turn around and say, no problems. And they'll look at you strange and you go, I'm refereeing your team next week. It's up to you. You're not. Yeah. You're not, but it diffuses a situation there.
It's just like constant aggro in both ears. I couldn't put up with that, I tell you.
I'll have to remember that as a question for you in a couple of weeks. You know, all those little things you're taught: pick people up by the armpit, stand on their toes, look where the shadow is from the floodlights. You know, what are the inside tricks from the referee? We need to get to that another week. Right, Ian, good to see you. You look like you're about to evaporate, so we'll let you go and get some.
Hey, listen. There's a little shard of sunlight coming through the trees opposite the road. So I'll go and stand across the road just for you two. See how we can get on.
So his nickname's Carnation Milk.
Exactly. Ian thinks vitamin D's a rapper. Right, boys. It's been good to see you. It's been good to see you again in a couple of weeks. As always, get in touch with us, please. Whistleblowers@dailymail.com. Send us your questions as hard as you like. We can answer them in a podcast in the weeks to come. Right, we're off and running. 2026 is underway. Mark, blow the full-time whistle, please. Thank you very much for watching Whistleblowers. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember, episodes every Thursday and Tuesday. And on a Sunday, you'll get our clip of the week.